Welcome to the Sooners 360 Recruiting Podcast, the podcast for OU recruiting fans by Sooners 360. Each week we catch you up with the latest in OU recruiting news and provide opinions and evaluations on all things OU football recruiting. I'm Chris Mason, lead recruiting analyst for Sooners 360. This podcast is now sponsored by Sooners 360 on Patreon. To support this podcast, please go to patreon.com/Sooners360817 and click subscribe. It's only $2 a month. There's also a free trial option, and that's where I've been posting the recruiting content and the portal content that I've been doing over the last 30 days. The link is also in the show notes. Also, this podcast is now part of the Believe podcast family. Every team, every topic, everywhere. Also, I've been appearing with Chris Griffin from the Horns Down podcast and Jason Watkins from the Hall of Fame podcast. For the portal, we've been doing daily updates. So if you're part of my YouTube channel, you can look there. If you're not part of my YouTube channel, simply go to youtube.com, put Sooners 360 in the search window and click subscribe. And you can be notified every time we do a portal update. And you can find all of the live stream replays there to catch up on all of the portal news that we've been reporting on for pretty much the last 5 days. I'm also appearing on Thursday nights with both Chris Griffin and Jason Watkins, also doing shows with Jason Watkins during the week to update recruiting and portal activity. But this episode is going to focus primarily on high school recruiting and give you guys a chance to catch up with that and get back into the flow of high school recruiting podcasts from our channel. So we will start with some portal news, but we're also going to try and get you back up to speed in high school recruiting. So this is episode 151, back to high school recruiting. So contrary to that, we'll start with a quick portal update. And I'm not going to go in any great in-depth in this. There's other channels available. You can listen to the updates Chris Griffin and I have been doing. But here's just a quick update recap. OU has 10 additions. Cole Sullivan, a linebacker. Amarion Harris, an offensive tackle from Arkansas. Cole Sullivan is from Michigan. Caleb Netta, an offensive center from Western Kentucky. Trell Harris, a wide receiver from Virginia. Dakota Fields, a cornerback DB from Oregon. Parker Livingston, a wide receiver from Texas. Lloyd Avant, an all-purpose back from Colorado State. Rocky Beers, a tight end from Colorado State. Hayden Hansen from Florida. He's a tight end. And then Kenny Ozawalu from UTSA, and he's a defensive end, possibly a defensive tackle, depending upon how he develops. So those are the 10 additions. After those additions, I think OU needs the following players and is missing, just some pieces. Defensive tackle is one of them. They need a big defensive tackle. I think they need one more tight end to give them 3 tight ends since they pretty much cleared out the tight end room. I think OU needs 2 more offensive linemen, 2 guys hopefully with some years to develop so they can be added to the mix and provide OU with more developmental depth there. Based upon the losses that we'll talk about in a little bit, but I think having lost Marcus Wimberly and Jaden Hardy, I think a safety potentially makes some sense. And then finally, depending upon how things shake out, I think they may need another linebacker. At this point, OU has had 24 scholarship departures, and that's a little hard to tell. Some players have come in and out. It's a little difficult to keep track of that. But the key losses at this point are Sam Omosigo at linebacker. I think Giovanni Gibson at wide receiver is kind of a loss. Jaden Hardy at safety. And then the big loss, I think, that OU's having maybe the hardest time finding a fit to replace is Marcus Strong, the defensive tackle who just committed to Clemson. So that's a quick review of the portal. You want more in-depth information? You can find the YouTube review sessions I did with Chris Griffin. We did one tonight talking about Cole Sullivan. But if you're trying to get a better picture of maybe some of the bigger additions, take a look at the Monday or Tuesday reviews that we did. They're about an hour long, but there's a lot of in-depth information about what's going on with the portal. All right, that's the portal done. We're now going to move to high school recruiting, reset that for the next 30 days, for the next month, as we move through the high school All-American game season. So the first game was last Saturday. It's the Under Armour game, the ESPN game. And they actually only showed it live on ESPN on tape delay. If you want to watch the game live, you have to watch it on YouTube because of ESPN's coverage of the NFL playoffs. Not quite sure why they chose that Saturday to do that when they knew they had so much competition kind of going on. And I'll be honest, the Under Armour game has really been kind of slipping in terms of quality and presentation and kind of how it's organized. It's especially at quarterback. Both of the All-Star games are trying to forestall some of the lack of interest by adding 2027 players in. And it's not really helping the quality of the game for the most part. I'll see how the Navy game is, but the Under Armour game was really pretty bad. It was a tough slog getting through that to see the players that had OU connections. And the first player that was in that game was Jake Krull, the senior who signed with OU and will be moving to Norman in about a week, I think. He was in the game. He probably had the best highlights of the OU guys or the OU players of interest. Once again, he's just showing that despite being undersized and small, according to some of the recruiting analysts, Krull's a get off the line first off, and his arsenal of pass rushing moves and his pass rush plan are just kind of elite. He had at least 2 sacks in the game. And then there's other clips where you just see his get off the line. I mean, he's a blur past the offensive tackle. The offensive tackle's barely out of his stance, and Jake's just flying past him. There's also another highlight where Jake basically bull rushed and put a 330-pound offensive tackle on his ass. And Jake, is also was able to get several sacks in the game and just looked as dominant as he always has, battling bigger, longer, 330-pound, 350-pound offensive tackles. And Jake doesn't win every battle, but he's certainly causing havoc everywhere he goes. So another good showing by Jake Krull. Everything I saw in the Under Armour game, both the highlights and some of the practice clips, tells me that Jake will show up in Norman, and if he can work on his some of his strength, add some good weight, maybe get to the 240 range, he can help OU in the fall. He can be a pass rush specialist on third down, give OU some reps there, and add something to the defensive end room. He's, as Jim Nagy said in his press conference on signing day, I mean, everyone paints this kid as like a try-hard kid, but he's got talent and ability. To quote someone, a student friend of mine, one of the most important elements of a pass rush is the get off, that burst, that initial, that jump. And Krull has it. So, or Krell. Hopefully, we'll get a final pronunciation on that to hopefully not be saying it wrong, because I think for the next 3-4 years we're going to be mentioning Jake Krull quite a bit. The 2027 commitment, Crew Jones, was also down in Florida. He had a sack in the game. He looks bigger than Krull, and he's in just absurd shape. A lot of power to his game. Still working on things, but overall looks like a fantastic prospect. I'm not quite sure why some of the services have him ranked in the upper 100s. To me, he looks like a top 100, top 50 kind of player, and just fits what OU wants to do, and is going to be and it's going to be just a big addition. I think he's probably going to play. He's like 6'4", maybe nearly 6'5". I think he's going to be 255 easily by the time he's playing football for the Sooners. Then a name from the past. He was a verbal commitment before. OU's making a big push for him now. Zane Rowe was at the Under Armour game, and he, in some of the practice videos we saw, he played inside and outside. He's a big kid. He's 6'4" and a half, 6'5", probably 255, 260 right now. Maybe a little bigger than that. And I think at this point, with the weight he's put on and the weight his frame can support, the only question will be for Zane in college is, will he stay at defensive end or could he move inside the defensive tackle? And like I said, OU has made a big push with him. I have a source indicating they think Zane Rowe's probably going to pick the Sooners. Zane Rowe's talking about making a commitment before Valentine's Day. So we got about 4 or 5 weeks until then. So something could fall then. And he was, in the practice videos we saw, and if you've listened to Josh McCuistion's podcast talking about it, Zane Rowe's hanging out with Creel and Jones a lot. So I really like where Oklahoma is. I'd like for them to add him. And Zane Rowe's flexibility of where he could be, he could be 6'5", 285, 290 and be an explosive 3 technique kind of guy. Or he could be a big defensive end or do a little bit of both. And if you were to choose OU likes that kind of flexibility. OU likes using different fronts. So there's definitely some options there. So that's the Under Armour game. Like I said, not the most exciting game. It's a high school stadium. There's not much of a crowd. And the talent level going to the game as ESPN's high school recruiting, impact just becomes less and less. The game's slipping. I think ESPN really needs to rethink what they're doing there. Wouldn't shock me if the Under Armour game didn't go away. So that's the Under Armour game. The game coming up on Saturday. The game with more, I don't know that more interest is the right term, but there's the possibility for big news. And it's the Navy game on NBC. The former Army game is now the Navy game. Kind of confusing, but whatever. It'll be Saturday around 12 o'clock, I think, Eastern, 12:30 Eastern. There'll be NFL games going on. 2 college football playoffs on Thursday, Friday, but there'll be NFL traffic. There'll be NFL games. There'll be playoff games, I believe, this weekend. I think I have that right. And there are 2 kids making decisions at this game. We kind of been leading up for it in December. Kind of took a Christmas break because between the playoff game and it's a dead period, and with signing day and the portal coming up, high school recruiting kind of has taken, has fallen to the background. OU's not making offers. The coaches were busy with the Bama game. Then they were busy getting ready for the portal. So not much going on from an offer standpoint from the high school side of things. That'll change once the portal window closes and the portal ends. But the Navy game's coming up on Saturday. Devin Robertson, the big nose guard from Mississippi, is going to decide. He's 6'1.5", 6'2", 320. He doesn't move like he's 320. He's an explosive, attacking, dominating nose guard. Perfect fit for the OU defense. I've been using the comp of that he's a twitchier, more explosive Dominic Williams. He's a threat to collapse the pocket and get after the quarterback. But he's also just a wall inside on the running game. And he also can get tackles for loss. He's absurdly ranked like number 400 in the country and a 3-star. I have no idea what that ranking's about. The programs that really want him are Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Tennessee, I think Georgia might be in his final group. I mean, it's just elite schools, and he's an elite-looking defensive tackle. I mean, and a nose guard especially. He's a big kid. You just won't move him inside. So to me, he's a 4-star, top 200, top 250 player easily. So I think with a good All-Star game and a good All-Star weekend, we can maybe see that start to change and that storyline get improved, because if OU was to get him, to add him to Elijah Harmon, who committed in December. Harmon's 6'3", 300, can be a 3-tech, probably could play nose as well, depending upon the setup. But if you have those two guys as your first two defensive line commitments, maybe you add Zane Rowe as a 3-tech. Maybe you look at some other players as well. That's about as good as you're going to get. I mean, that's a great-looking D-line group. So I'm high on Devin Robinson. Have been, when I watched it whenever OU watched him. I watched his huddle film. I really liked that. And when he visited OU in November, I was like, oh, he's visiting OU. I didn't think OU really had a shot. Then it became clear that OU was kind of moving in a positive direction with him. I was kind of surprised and was very, very happy, because he's a big kid when you combine him with the guys we signed in 2026. So if you have Harmon, Brian Harris, Carrington, and maybe this Robinson kid, that's a good foursome blend of different abilities. Carrington's a 3-tech. Harris is a 3-tech, or could be a nose. That he's just that big. He's that long. And then Harmon's very similar. So you kind of have two guys that are flexible, like David Stone and Harmon and Harris. And then you have a 3-tech, who could be very much like Grayson Holton. Then you got a nose who could be very much like Dominic Williams. So in a certain way, I'm kind of imagining that foursome as OU's foursome moving forward down the road. Taking, the transition from the Dominic Williams, David Stone, Jay Jackson D-line to then these guys kind of taking over. So the other guy that's probably going to make a commitment is Tevin. He's going to announce is Tevin Epps from California. He picked Texas earlier in the year. He decommitted from Texas, I think around September. And since then, he took 2 visits to OU and seems heavily locked in with OU. Now, Epps is a little bit of a hard player to fit, because he's 6'4", 6'5", 220, 230. OU's looking at him at linebacker. And whereas I don't think he would be a Mike, there's a potentially could be a big Will or even a Cheetah. It's odd. He does 2 things equally well that make it hard to know where OU will. It makes it hard to know what position to call his best position, but he rushes the passer. His burst off the edge is elite looking, but he's also fantastic dropping into coverage. So I think OU's going to call him a linebacker and then just use him all over the field and cause chaos and havoc. And he can legitimately do that. I think Josh McCuistion, who's been down in San Antonio watching him practice. Based upon his video, he's dropping to the 100 area, 94, 95. Josh McCuistion thinks he's better than that. I think he's a top 50 player in the nation. And if you want to comp for me, I think he's bordering his skill set is bordering very close to something in the Micah Parsons range. He has that kind of ceiling. So if he was to choose OU, that would be a big addition. That's another 4-star, another top 150 player. Would give OU and another connection in California, where OU's kind of building a hub and a pipeline in this class. It would be a big addition. And then hopefully we'll get to watch Charles Hatton run the ball. As you know, I'm a huge Charles Hatton fan. When that recruiting battle turned OU's way at the kind of the 11th hour, I was excited about that. That was great news. And he's at the practices, and we'll get to see the fact that he's 6'1", 220, and how can he run the ball in an all-star game where sometimes running backs, kind of get a bigger showcase because it's kind of hard to get any rhythm in a passing game with only a couple of practices. So those are the three major names in the Navy game and the guys I'll be watching. And I think we're going to get, like I said, 2 commitment announcements during the game. So if you still like the excitement of a hat choice on live television, we're going to get 2 of them. And I'm not sure how many more of them we're really going to get. So I don't think, it's going to be mostly 2027 kids deciding. 2026 kids, for the most part, they've already signed. So that kind of makes I think that's also impacting the All-Star game. Plus, guys are enrolling early. Bo Bentley isn't at the All-Star game this year because he was there last year. He wants to get to Norman, and he wants to start prepping to play quarterback for OU. So that's the Navy game. Let's just do a quick recap of the 2027 class and where OU stands. Right now, OU has 11 verbals. I think by Valentine's Day, they could be at maybe 15, which seems kind of crazy. And I think with the new 105 scholarship number, OU could easily sign 30 kids. Rankings-wise, they're number 1 right now. They're ahead of A&M on 247. That's partly due to the 11 kids that they signed. A&M has 9. Numbers are pretty close. If A&M adds a couple more kids, they'll probably jump OU. But then OU will jump back with the additions possibly of Robinson and Epps. So there's some ebb and flow to that. Rivals is using a ranking system where they're just taking the value of the top 3 commits. I think it's 3 right now. So the schools in the top 5. Yeah, here we go. So it's 3 commits, top 3 commits. They'll probably adjust that to the top 4 commits in a couple of weeks. Ohio State's number 1. They have 9 commits, and they have 7 of their commits are either 4 stars or 5 stars. Texas Tech is second with 5 commits. They have 1 5-star, and then they've got a super high-rated 3-star. OU has 1 5-star, and they're third. 4 5-stars, a couple of high 4 5-stars right now. That's Caden Penny and DeMar DeZern. A&M is 4th, and Notre Dame's 5th. So it just depends who's doing what methodology the folks are using. But OU's right now trending towards a top 10 class, maybe top 5, depending upon how their prospects are ranked. Because there's obviously some ebb and flow to the rankings. Some kids move up and some kids move down. And OU has a number of kids right now that are unranked who won't be unranked for much longer. For example, looking at our recruiting list here, Cooper Hackett's the number 1 kid. Caden Penny is number 2. DeMar DeZern is number 3. Crew Jones is 4. Elijah Harmon is 5. Mikhail McCrary is 6. And then you've got a couple of guys who are badly underranked. Michael Davis from Arizona, they have as the number 400 player in the nation, basically. That's ridiculous. His film's stupid good. He should be a top 200 player. Trayvon Hall from Alabama, he's ranked number 828. Again, he's got 4-star film. And then Keldred Ben the running back commitment from Montgomery, Texas, is just, he's completely unranked. He has an OU offer and an OU commitment, and he just got offered by Oregon and Texas this week. So I think Keldrick Ben is possibly a top 100 player in the nation, top 150. So once things shake out with OU's ranking commitments, I think OU will be in a position where they'll be closer. Of the 9 guys they have committed, I think probably they'll be at 7 to 8 4 stars or 5 stars. All right, so the other big piece of news since I last did this podcast that kind of impacts recruiting is OU is obviously going to add a new tight end coach. Joe Johnson Finley has been relieved of his role, reported by George Stoya, Parker Thune, Colin Kennedy, everybody that's has any kind of respectable name on the OU beat has reported this. OU is going to look to hire a new tight end coach. I think they want to do that as soon as possible because they want to make sure that tight end coach is part of the portal process, and maybe to add another portal tight end that they sign off on, or maybe that they bring with them. As it's been stated in a number of areas, maybe OU Insider had this name first. Sooner Scoop is obviously reporting something similar. Looks like Alabama tight end coach Brian Ellis is OU's first choice and OU's targeting him. So if they could bring in a new tight end coach, OU doesn't have any tight end commitments for 2027, but they've got 4 strong names that they're looking at right now. The first is Ben Kolar from Norman North. He's about 6'3", 230, has had a big junior year before he got hurt. He's not I kind of wish he was 6'6" like his brother. His brothers were bigger. So you maybe wonder if, maybe Ben will add an inch or two over this next year. Who knows? But at 6'3", he could easily play at 245, and he's got good speed. He's a good blocker. He would be a very good functional tight end at that point. Couple of guys with just bigger frames with a little more national attention. The first one is Seneca Driver from Kentucky. He's 6'6", 230, and he's kind of a Jermaine Grisham type talent. He's a top 10 tight end nationally, top 150 player in the country. His footage is great. He's been in Norman twice in the fall to watch OU play twice. He would be a big addition and maybe and really the best, highest ranked tight end that an OU had signed in quite a while. Also, Zach Ferries from Vegas visited. He's 6'6", 220. He's also a top 200, 4-star elite-looking tight end. Both Driver and Ferries have the frames to be, 245, 250 easily. And OU and Ferries had a great time at OU. Seemed to be clicking. I'd like to think that a new name at the tight end coach position could only boost OU's status with these guys. Then last but not least, Titus Hawk from Choctaw. He's a top 200 guy right now. 6'7", 215 is sort of his last reported number. He's a baseball player and a football player. His dad played baseball at OSU. He's been to several OU home games last fall. I don't know where the OSU coaching change will fit into all this for him. But he's definitely a name and a name to track and a name to keep an eye out. I wouldn't be surprised if OU added 1 or 2 more offers in the tight end room, try to find a big blocking tight end, someone who has big kid who's already got some weight on his frame. I think OU's going to look to try and sign a guy like that every year. Last but not least, OU does have a February signing day they could use. No names are really bubbling to the surface yet, but OU's front office staff is buried in the portal right now. I think there's a possibility OU will look to sign 2 or 3 kids in February, depending upon what they're able to track and find among the talent that didn't sign in December. I particularly would like OU to look for 1 or 2 offensive linemen, players, folks who need some dev time but have some interesting athletic profiles. And I do think they need to look for a Hayden Hansen type kid in high school, someone who's plays tight end, needs to add weight to their frame, but has a big frame, physical, somebody who, even if they were, 6'7", 215 right now, but you needed to add weight to them, as bring them in, sign them, put them in a weight program, add some size to them, and then build them up to be the sort of two-way big blocking tight end that it looks like OU needs to run the offense that Arbuckle wants to run in the SEC. All right, that's 30 minutes of what I was able to scrape together in high school action for you guys. Thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on your audio platform of choice. Also, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube if that's where you watch it, to be notified of when these podcasts go up, and for the other traffic that I'm doing covering all other things related to OU. Finally, please visit patreon.com/Sooners360817 to subscribe for more recruiting content, which directly supports this podcast. I've been getting some new subscribers lately. Appreciate that traffic. And that's where that Patreon channel helps keep this podcast free. So if you enjoy this podcast, please consider giving the Patreon a chance. Other than that, we will be back next week with hopefully commitment updates, maybe some more news about high school recruiting, and we'll go from there. Thanks.